Las Vegas, 1965. The Sands Hotel glittered like a diamond in the desert night. Inside the Copa Room, 400 people sat dressed in their finest suits and evening gowns, waiting for the legendary Rat Pack to take the stage. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. These weren't just entertainers, they were American royalty. But tonight something was different. In the back corner, near table 47, sat a man in a crisp white suit. His silver cufflinks caught the spotlight, but his eyes were cold as ice. He hadn't come to be entertained. He'd come to send a message. When Sammy Davis Jr. walked onto that stage with his $1,000,000 smile, that man stood up. He pointed his finger like a weapon and shouted one word that silenced the entire room. What happened next was so powerful, so shocking that it was erased from history books. But tonight, you're going to hear the truth. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss stories that remind us what real friendship and courage look like. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand who these men really were. Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't just a performer. He was a living miracle. Born in 1925 in Harlem, New York, he started performing when he was just 3 years old. His father and uncle were vaudeville dancers, and little Sammy would watch from the wings, his feet tapping along to every rhythm. By age 7, he was touring the country, learning to tap dance, sing, play drums, and do impressions that could make grown men cry with laughter. But America in the 1930s and 40s wasn't kind to a black boy, no matter how talented he was. Young Sammy couldn't eat in the same restaurants as the white performers he shared stages with. He couldn't stay in the same hotels. After shows where thousands applauded him, he'd be sent to sleep in boarding houses on the colored side of town. When World War II came, Sammy enlisted in the army. He was 18 years old and believed serving his country would earn him respect. Instead, he faced brutal racism from his own fellow soldiers. They broke his nose. They painted him white while he slept. They made him use separate bathrooms and called him names that would make your blood boil. But Sammy never gave up. After the war, he returned to performing with even more determination. By the 1950s, he'd become one of the most talented entertainers in the world. He could sing like an angel, dance like lightning, do impressions of anyone, play multiple instruments, and act in films. The man could do it all. Then there was Dean Martin. Born Dino Paul Crocetti in 1917, he grew up in Steubenville, Ohio, the son of Italian immigrants. His father was a barber who barely spoke English. Young Dino worked in a steel mill, dealt cards in illegal gambling houses, and boxed under the name Kid Crochet, just to help his family survive. Dean had a gift. A smooth voice like warm honey and a personality that made everyone feel like his best friend. He could make you laugh until your sides hurt, then sing a ballad that would bring tears to your eyes. By the early 1960s, Dean Martin was one of America's biggest stars, hosting his own TV show and selling millions of records. Frank Sinatra brought them together. Frank, Dean, Sammy, Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford became known as the Rat Pack. They performed together in Las Vegas, made movies together, and became symbols of cool, sophisticated entertainment. But the Rat Pack was more than just a group of performers, they were a statement. You see, in 1960s America, segregation was still legal in many states. Black performers like Sammy could headline on the Las Vegas Strip, but they couldn't stay in the hotels where they performed. They couldn't eat in the restaurants. They couldn't even gamble in the casinos after their shows ended. That's where Dean Martin drew his line in the sand. Dean had a clause written into every contract he signed. If Sammy can't stay here, I don't perform here. If Sammy can't eat here, I don't eat here. We're a package deal. Frank Sinatra backed him up completely. Together, they used their star power to force Las Vegas hotels to integrate, years before the Civil Rights Act made it law. Dean and Sammy weren't just co-workers. They were brothers. Dean would tell anyone who'd listen, "That man has more talent in his pinky finger than most people have in their whole body." And Sammy would say Dean was the kindest man in show business, someone who saw people for who they were, not the color of their skin. But not everyone in America was ready for that kind of friendship. The year 1965 was a turning point in American history. The Civil Rights Act had passed just 1 year earlier. But hatred didn't disappear with the stroke of a pen. The Ku Klux Klan was still active, still powerful, and still determined to keep Black Americans in their place. The Sands Hotel in Las Vegas had become a symbol of integration, thanks to performers like the Rat Pack. But that made it a target. Hate groups despised what was happening there. Black and white performers sharing the same stage, staying in the same hotels, eating at the same tables. That November evening, the Copa Room was packed. Everyone who was anyone in Las Vegas wanted to see the Rat Pack perform. The room buzzed with excitement as waiters in crisp white. But to the sea gasped. Some people started to get up to leave, uncomfortable with the confrontation Scaradian. He used a word so ugly, so filled with hate, that I won't repeat it here. Several women and Ed to intervene. Sammy stood there, and for just a moment, you could see every hurt, every insult, every act of racism he'd endured in his 40 years flash across his face. His shoulders sagged just slightly. The spotlight felt less warm, more like an interrogation lamp. Hotel security started moving toward the man, but they were slow, hesitant. This was 1965, remember? Even in supposedly integrated Las Vegas, confronting a white man who was harassing a black performer wasn't something security was eager to do. Frank Sinatra started walking toward the edge of the stage, his face darkening with anger. "Hey, you lousy!" But Dean Martin was faster. Dean Martin moved across that stage with a purpose no one had seen before. The easygoing, laid-back persona vanished. His jaw was set, his eyes were hard, and his movements were deliberate. He walked right past the microphone, past Frank, straight to where Sammy stood. He put his arm around Sammy's shoulders, not in a patronizing way, but like a brother protecting his family. Then Dean turned to face the man in the white suit. "You got something to say?" Dean's voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent room like thunder. "You come into this room, you interrupt our show, you insult my friend?" The man in the white suit seemed surprised. He'd expected the black performer to be intimidated, expected security to escort him out quietly, maybe expected some outrage from the liberal audience. But he hadn't expected Dean Martin to step up. "Your friend?" The man laughed, a cruel sound. "What kind of white man calls a—" "Stop right there," Dean interrupted, and there was steel in his voice. "I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to listen, and then you're going to leave. And if you don't leave on your own, I'm going to make sure you leave in a way you won't forget." The audience leaned forward. This was no longer entertainment, this was real. Dean's arm stayed around Sammy's shoulders as he continued. "This man right here, Sammy Davis Jr., has more class in his little finger than you have in your entire body. He's served his country in uniform, which I'm betting you never did. He's worked harder than you've probably worked in your entire life. And he's got more talent than 1,000 people like you combined." Dean's voice rose now, filling the Copa Room. "You see that tuxedo he's wearing? It costs more than your car. You see that watch on his wrist? Costs more than your house. You know why? Because he earned it. With his sweat, his talent, his dedication." The man tried to interrupt, but Dean wasn't having it. "I'm not done," Dean said, and something in his tone made the man shut his mouth. "You came here thinking you could intimidate him, humiliate him, make him feel small. But you know what you've actually done? You've shown everyone in this room exactly what kind of man you are. Small. Scared. Pathetic." Dean looked around the room, making eye contact with people in the audience. "My father came to this country with nothing. He was called awful names too. Wop. Guinea. People told him to go back to Italy, that he didn't belong here. But you know what America is supposed to be? It's supposed to be a place where it doesn't matter where you came from, or what you look like. It's what you can do, who you are inside, that counts." He gestured to Sammy. This man embodies that promise. He's living proof that talent, hard work, and character matter more than the color of someone's skin. And if you can't see that, if you're so blinded by hate that you can't recognize greatness when it's standing in front of you, then you're the one who doesn't belong here. The room erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping, some with tears in their eyes. The man in the white suit looked around, suddenly realizing he was completely alone in his hatred. Dean wasn't finished. He looked at security. "Get him out of here. And make sure he knows he's banned from the Sands. Permanently." Then Dean turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, if any of you share this man's views, there's the door. We don't want your money. We don't want your applause. This stage is for everyone who believes in dignity, respect, and the American dream. Not a single person left. Security finally moved in, flanking the man in the white suit. As they escorted him toward the exit, he tried one last time to save face. "You'll regret this, Martin. All of you will." But his voice was drowned out by the standing ovation that filled the Copa room. 400 people on their feet, applauding not just for Dean, but for what he represented: real friendship, real courage, real American values. After the man was removed, Dean stayed at Sammy's side. He grabbed the microphone with one hand, his other arm still around his friend's shoulders. "You know what?" Dean said to the audience, his voice returning to that warm, familiar tone. "I was going to do Everybody Loves Somebody next, but I think Sammy and I should do something together. What do you say, Sam?" Sammy's eyes were glistening, but he smiled. A real smile this time, not the performer's mask. "I'd be honored, Pally." They launched into Me and My Shadow, a duet they'd performed hundreds of times. But this time was different. This time, every word carried extra meaning. When Dean sang about a shadow that was true blue, everyone in that room knew he was singing about real friendship, the kind that stands up to hatred and doesn't back down. As they sang and danced together, something magical happened. The ugliness of those few minutes evaporated, replaced by joy, by music, by the unbreakable bond between two friends who refused to let hate win. After the show, back in Dean's dressing room, Sammy said, "You didn't have to do that. You could have let security handle it." Dean looked at him like he'd said something crazy. "What are you talking about? That wasn't security's fight. That was my fight. You're my friend. Nobody talks to my friend like that." What Dean did that night wasn't just about defending Sammy. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it might have cost him fans, even when staying silent would have been easier. Here's what makes this story so important, especially for us today. Real friendship isn't just about the good times. It's not just about laughing together and making memories. Real friendship means standing up when your friend is under attack. It means using your voice, your power, your platform to defend them. Dean Martin could have stayed quiet. He could have let that moment pass and moved on with the show. Many people would have. But Dean understood something fundamental. Silence in the face of hatred is agreement. If you see someone being treated unfairly and you say nothing, you're part of the problem. How many times in our own lives do we see injustice and stay quiet? How many times do we witness someone being mistreated, disrespected, or discriminated against, and we tell ourselves it's not our business? How many times do we choose comfort over courage? Dean Martin reminds us that character is revealed not in the spotlight moments we plan for, but in the unexpected moments when we have to choose between what's easy and what's right. The story of that night was erased from history, not officially but quietly. It wasn't included in most documentaries about the Rat Pack. It wasn't widely reported in newspapers. Why? Because in 1965, many people didn't want to acknowledge that racism existed in glamorous Las Vegas, and many others didn't want to celebrate a white man standing up for a black man. But the people who were there never forgot. Years later, after both Dean and Sammy had passed away, audience members would share their memories of that night. They'd talk about how it changed their perspective, how it gave them courage to stand up against injustice in their own lives. Sammy Davis Jr. would go on to become one of the most beloved entertainers in American history. He broke barriers, opened doors, and never let hatred dim his light. Dean Martin remained his loyal friend until the very end, proving that true friendship transcends race, religion, and everything else that divides us. The lesson here is simple but profound. Be the kind of friend who stands up. Be the kind of person who speaks out. Be the kind of human being who recognizes that we all deserve dignity and respect, regardless of what we look like or where we come from. In a world that often feels divided, where hatred still tries to find a voice, we need more people like Dean Martin. People willing to put their arm around a friend and say, "Not on my watch." If this story moved you, if it reminded you what real courage and friendship look like, show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Let's make sure stories like this aren't erased from history. They're too important, too powerful, too necessary for the times we live in. Remember, respect isn't about money or fame. It's about character. And character is what you do when it would be easier to do nothing. Dean Martin showed us all what that looks like. Las Vegas, November 1965. One man's hatred. One friend's courage. One moment that defined what America should be.